Hi and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video, and today we are discussing the Oro dei Sani Governo Rosso 2016. For this guy, we travel to central Italy, to the eastern side of the boot that is the country of Italy, in the region of Tuscany. Tuscany kind of sits just above the knee of the boot, so I guess Italy is a thigh-high boot after all. More specifically, we are heading inland to the hills around Florence. Now, Oro dei Sani as an estate is one of the oldest producers in Tuscany, and back in the day it used to be run and managed by the monks of Certosa di Firenze. And by back in the day, I mean like medieval times.
Just a flesh wound.
So the wine itself is 100% Sangiovese. Now, Sangiovese is the most widely planted grape in all of Italy, but it has a sort of spiritual home in Tuscany where it produces absolutely legendary wines like Chianti, Brunello di Montalcino, Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. And this isn't any old Toscano Rosso, this is a Governo Toscano Rosso, which means, unsurprisingly, that it employs a winemaking technique called Governo. So what is Governo? Essentially, it's the winemaking practice of tossing dried grapes into the fermentation vats. So back in the 1300s, when the Governo technique was first implemented, it was used to boost fermentations. So when the yeast was struggling a little bit, it would be given a nutritional morale boost. I guess it would be akin to tossing Beast Boy a bowl of vegan ragu. But one must remember that in winemaking, everything is connected. So you can't just throw in these dried grapes with all their sugar and have them only boost the yeast. They're going to have a whole bunch of other effects as well. So let's take a look at what they are. First of all, the addition of these dried grapes into the fermentation vat will add both color and tannin. Because while the grapes may have lost their water, they've definitely hung on to those anthocyanins and polyphenols, which are then extracted very quickly by the alcohol in the fermenting wine. And speaking of alcohol, then not only do they add color and tannin, but these dried grapes will also add additional sugar. Additional sugar can result in additional alcohol, and if it's not converted to alcohol, it will of course add sweetness, which then boosts the fruit profile in the wine. So you have an increase in color, you have an increase in texture, but you also have a heavier mouthfeel and a sweeter, rounded expression of fruit. And you might ask, well, why do we need the extra sweetness or the extra alcohol? You must remember that Sangiovese is a very high acid, high tannin grape. So a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of a fuller, slicker mouthfeel, which is often provided by alcohol, goes a long way to tempering some of the more spiky characteristics of Sangio. And finally, it's worth noting that the Governo practice usually takes place quite late in the fermentation. And so it arrives just in time to help trigger malolactic conversion, which takes the rather sour, bright malic acid and converts it into the softer, more dairy-like, more velvety lactic acid. All this to explain why the high acid that you'd expect from a Sangiovese is not present in a wine like this. In fact, some of you might be left wishing that there was, in fact, a little more acid in this wine. And if you're one of those people, then just put it in the fridge for 10 minutes and you'll find those brighter components are a lot more obvious. And at this point, of course, some of you might say, "Boo, hiss Han, I thought we were supposed to be talking about natural things like terroir and the weather and the climate and cultivars." First off, I would say that you have to remember that terroir will always include the human in the process. Terroir must include the winemaking traditions of the culture in which that wine is made. That's part of the deal. So this Oro dei Sani is in fact an expression of certain Tuscan winemaking traditions expressed through Sangiovese, rather than simply being an expression of Sangiovese as a grape. In the New World, we just haven't had enough time to develop these incredible winemaking traditions that are region specific. And so we compensate by focusing on things like the purity of cultivar expression. And if we want a wine that is a pure expression of Sangiovese as a cultivar, then we could look to the Lavier's Satyricon Sangiovese, which is produced up on the Himmel and Oder Ridge and has an incredibly linear expression of the grape. But that is a conversation for another day. So to conclude, when you're drinking this guy, give it a little bit of time. It really does open up in the glass. And if you are drinking it in summer at home and you don't have air conditioning, then perhaps just give it 10 minutes in the fridge before you serve so that you can hit that more traditional 16-degree temperature rather than, say, 22 degrees, which is what your lounge might be at. And if you have any questions about Oro dei Sani or Sangiovese or the Governo technique, drop them in the field below and I will get back to you as soon as possible.